Today we'll be looking at the notes for targets 10 and 11. On target 10, we will be multiplying two matrices on a graphing calculator, so you will need to have access to a graphing calculator in order to do this. If you don't have one at home, please come into our classrooms at lab before or after school so that you can always borrow one of ours. We will provide them for you during the test. So the first thing we're going to do today is we are going to multiply two matrices together on the calculator. If I look at the bottom of my page right now, I have matrix A and B. That's the one I'm going to use as we go through these steps. Matrix A here, remember, is a 2 by 2 matrix. It has 2 rows and 2 columns. Matrix B is also a 2 by 2 matrix with 2 rows and 2 columns. Remember, our rows go horizontally and then our columns go vertically. So the first thing I need to do is I have to be able to type this matrix into my graphing calculator. So step 1 says to hit our second x to the -1 button. So we have second up here on the top left, and then we'll hit x to the -1, which is in the middle of that left-hand row. You'll see here that I have 3 things next to my matrices. It does not matter if you have all of these full, one full, or none of them. When I want to put a matrix in, we will scroll to the right to hit edit. I'm going to put this into matrix A, so I'm going to hit enter. Matrix A, we just said, was a 2 by 2 matrix, so I'll put that into my calculator. So we'll hit 2, enter, 2, enter. As you do this, you'll see the matrix that is actually on your calculator become the size that you want it to be. Again, here it doesn't matter if you do have numbers or if everything is blank. I'm going to type in now -14, my first number in my matrix. Make sure you use the negative button and not the minus. Hit enter and you'll see that fill into that matrix. Our next number going across the row is 5. So we hit enter, 32, enter, -60, enter. Once you've completed your entire matrix, you do need to make sure that you exit out of this. So we are going to hit second mode for quit. That will exit us out of the matrix. To put in matrix B, we'll go through all the steps again. So we'll hit second matrix. I'll scroll to the right to edit. This time I'm going to scroll down to matrix B and hit enter. Matrix B for us again is a 2 by 2 matrix. So 2, enter, 2, enter, and then I'll fill in my numbers. So I have 11, making sure to hit enter after each number, 45, -16, and 5. Our matrix is in, so we're going to quit out. So again, second mode will allow you to quit out. Now we're going to go on to step 4 there, where we're going to actually try to multiply our matrices together. So I go into second x to the -1 again to my matrices. This time I'm not going to scroll over to edit because they're already in there. I'm just going to hit enter on matrix A. I want to multiply matrix A by matrix B, so I need to get matrix B up here. So I'll do second x to the -1 for my matrices. I'll scroll down to B and I'll hit enter. So on my calculator, I can see I have matrix A, I have matrix B. We hit enter, and it will multiply those two matrices together for us. So let's just put that as our answer. When we do A times B, we are going to get the matrix. Make sure you do put it into matrix form of -234, -605, 1,312, and 1,140. Okay, let's go on. Let's try to do another one. So now I want to do P times M. I know P here is a 3 by 3 matrix. There are 3 rows and 3 columns. M is a 3 by 2, 3 rows by 2 columns. Remember, if these middle two numbers match, that tells us that we can multiply it together. The outside two numbers are actually going to tell us what the size of the matrix will be for our answer. We'll also get that from our calculator, but I know I can expect that my matrix is going to have 3 rows and 2 columns. So first thing I need to do is put matrix P and matrix M into my calculator. So we need to go to our matrix and we need to edit. So I'll go second matrix, scroll over to edit, and I'm just going to put it in A again. I'll put matrix P into A, so matrix P is a 3 by 3 matrix, so 3 enter, 3 enter, and fill in our numbers. -3, -12, -7, 52, 0, 8, -5, 21, and 10. I have finished my matrix, so I'm going to hit second mode to quit out of there. And then second matrix again to go over to edit and put in my matrix B. Matrix B we see is a 3 by 2, so 3 enter, 2 enter, and we have our 3 by 2 matrix. Plugging our numbers in, so 3, -17, 7, -4, 22, and 10. Quit out of there. Remember, when we want to multiply our matrices, we're still going to go to the matrix, so second x to the -1 for our matrix. I want to do A times B, so enter on A. Second matrix, scroll down, enter on B, and hit enter again. It will give us our answer. You can see there we have our 3 by 2 matrix. It has the 3 rows and the 2 columns. So my answer, I have -247, 29, 332, -804, 352, and 101. We have one more example to go through of multiplying these on our matrices. G here has 4 rows and 2 columns, so it is a 4 by 2. F has 2 rows and 2 columns, so it is a 2 by 2. We know we can multiply them because my inner two numbers match, so my number of columns in the first matrix with the number of rows in the second matrix, and my answer will be a 4 by 2. So let's go plug those matrices in. Second matrix, scroll over to edit whenever you want to put one in. We have a 4 by 2 this time. Remember to hit enter after each number, and then plug those values in. Remember to use that negative button and not the minus key, otherwise it is going to give you a syntax error on the calculator. When you finish your matrix, quit out. Go back into our matrix to edit our matrix B. B this time I'm going to fill in with our matrix F here, so it is a 2 by 2. Filling in the values of our matrix. Oops. If you ever make a mistake, you can always just scroll over, so I need -9 instead of -99. Quit out of here. To multiply, we do second matrix, enter on A. Remember, whenever you want to multiply, we no longer need to go to edit, we just need to hit enter on the matrix to call it to the screen. And matrix F times matrix G did give us that 4 by 2 matrix we were expecting. So we have -166, 1,456, -439, 129, 163, 237, -130, and 90. So target 10, we need to make sure we can multiply 2 matrices together using the graphing calculator. Target 11, we are going to also be using our graphing calculator. We will continue to use matrices, but we are going to solve a system of we will not be using matrices. We'll be using our graphing part of our graphing calculator to solve two equations. When you try to solve two equations on your graphing calculator, the one thing we have to remember is our equations always have to be in slope-intercept form, or that y equals, otherwise your calculator does not know how to graph them. So let's look at A here. We want to graph the equation -1/2 x plus 2 and 3x minus 5. When we graph them, remember, just like we did in the beginning of the unit, we're going to look where those two graphs intersect. So the first thing I want to do in my graphing calculator is I want to look for that y equals button. You're going to find the y equals button in the top left part of your calculator. This is where we will always go in order to graph our equations, to enter the equations in. So on that very top left-hand row, I'm going to click that y equals button. When you click that, you may or may not have other equations in there. If you do, you just want to make sure you hit the clear button so that you don't have any other equations. Now looking at A, I'm going to type my two equations. So I have -1/2 x plus 2. So I'm going to do negative. The graphing calculator does not have a nice fraction button. So instead of using a fraction button, I'm just going to do 1 divided by 2 to get that -1/2. The X button is found at the top of your calculator, right underneath that mode where we are using to quit out on stuff. So I have -1/2 x plus 2. I need two equations, so I'm going to scroll down. My second equation is 3x minus 5, so 3. Again, use that X button on the top of your calculator, minus 5. So I've done my step 1 and step 2 up here, entering the equations in. You'll see step 3 says to hit graph. When I hit graph, yours may be colored or it may just look like two black lines, but we have our system of equations graphed for us. Remember, we said we need to find what that intersection point is. So in order to find that intersection point, I'm going to hit second and then trace. So trace is right up by graph. If you look, number 5 says intersect, so we'll scroll down to number 5. Click enter. So the next thing it tells us to do after we do the intersect is hit enter again. This way it's going to hit enter for our first curve. You'll see first curve and then it becomes second curve in the bottom left hand of your screen. Hit enter again, just selecting those two lines. For guess, we can just hit enter again and it gives us that intersection point there on the bottom. So you know you have the answer once it says intersection down there. So the intersection here is at 2, 1. My x value is 2, my y is 1. Let's look at the second example. So our second example is still in slope-intercept form, so we don't need to do anything to those equations other than plug them in our calculator. So to plug the equations into our calculator, we hit y equals, clear out our last two equations we used. Our new equation says 3x minus 3. And our second equation is -1/2. Again, for 1/2, we'll do 1 divided by 2, x plus 4. Hit the graph button in the top right of your screen. And then to find the intersection, we hit second, trace the button right next to graph. We're looking for the intersection, so we're going to scroll down to number 5. And then we're going to have to hit enter 3 times. So it says first curve, hit enter, second curve, hit enter, guess, hit enter, and it tells us our intersection is at 2, 3. If you accidentally hit enter too many times, you will have to start over. There is no back button on the graphing calculator. If we look at examples C and D, on both of these, we have to rewrite them into slope-intercept form before we can graph them. So the first thing I'm going to do is solve for y. I'm going to do it in both of the equations before I plug them in. So on C, the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 5x from both sides. So I have -2y equals -5x minus 10. Get y by itself by dividing everything by -2. And my equation becomes y equals a positive 5/2 x. Negative 10 divided by negative 2 gives me plus 5. For the second equation, I'm going to subtract 2x. So then I have negative 4y equals negative 2x plus 12. And divide everything by negative 4. So y equals negative 2 over negative 4 becomes a positive 1/2 x. 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. So I have my two equations in slope-intercept form that I need to graph on the calculator. So again, to start graphing, we need to go to our y equals to plug our equations in. Clear out the ones we already have. So our first equation is 5/2 x, so 5 divided by 2x plus 5. Enter to go down to our second equation. Our second equation is 1 divided by 2x minus 3. To graph, we hit the graph button in the upper right. We need to find where these two lines intersect, so we do second trace. And we go down to number 5, or just type in the number 5 for intersect. Hit enter for your first curve, enter for your second curve, enter for your guess, and our intersection is negative 4, negative 5. Okay. For our last example D, again, we need to put these into slope-intercept form. First equation, I will subtract 3x. So then negative y equals negative 3x minus 4. To get rid of the negative, divide everything by negative 1. So y equals a positive 3x plus 4. The second equation, I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. So I have 3y equals negative 6x minus 3. Divide everything by 3. So y equals negative 2x minus 1. Plug these two equations into the graphing calculator, starting with our y equals. Clear out our old equations. So y equals, for our first equation, 3x plus 4. And then for our second equation, we have negative 2x minus 1. Click on graph to find the intersection, second trace, number 5. We hit enter 3 times, first curve, second curve, guess, and the intersection is negative 1, 1. Please, if you have any questions, come in and see your teacher. Feel free to come and use a graphing calculator during AC Lab or if we are available before or after school.